Hello, everybody. Good to be back for another edition of the Breath of Fresh Air webcast on YouTube. I am Charles Taylor, and I am by myself for this episode. Patrick Brackett hopefully will be able to join me later on this week. So, a lot of catching up to do. I think it's been about almost 3 weeks to a month since we have done the last show for this. A lot of things have been going on with me, so just bear with me and we'll be back with more shows starting this week. So let's start. Before I get to everything that's going on with the NBA and college basketball, among other things, let me give a few thoughts about the Super Bowl. I know it's 2 weeks old, but you guys haven't really heard what I had to say about it too much. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw these thoughts out here real quick. First off, congratulations to the New England Patriots for winning their fifth Super Bowl title, coming back and beating the Falcons. As you guys know, Patrick is a big Atlanta Falcons fan. So he wasn't too happy about it, but honestly, he took the loss better than I thought he would. But give all the credit to the Patriots for coming back and staying in that game. They were down 28-3. Looked like it was all but over, but they have the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history, won the game in overtime. James White was a beast at the running back position. And of course, Tom Brady is the first quarterback to win 5 Super Bowls. There was a lot of talk in these last couple of weeks about whether or not he should retire. You know what? Honestly, if he wanted to retire, he could. I mean, he could retire right now, probably go down as the best quarterback in the history of the NFL. I still think it's probably Joe Montana, but if you want to say Tom Brady, that's okay too. Regardless, the man has 5 Super Bowl rings. He has a couple of MVP, regular season MVP trophies. He also had a year where he threw 50 touchdown passes, that think in 2007, where they almost went undefeated. And just think, if it wasn't for a couple of Eli Manning miracle passes for the New York Giants, we could be talking about 7 Super Bowls in a span of a decade and a half. So, look, he could retire right now. I mean, really, he really doesn't have much else to prove. But as long as he is in love with what he does, by all means, continue to do it. And I do think he could play very elite football for at least another 3 or 4 seasons. He's 39 years old. I know he'll be turning 40, but he keeps himself in pretty good shape. So retire. He's not going to retire. He said he's not going to retire. He's going to do this as long as he can. He's always talked about playing in his mid 40s. And I think he could possibly do that. I think more realistically, maybe 3 more seasons of elite ball. But I mean, as long as he's with Bill Belichick, anything is possible with New England, and there's no signs of them slowing down. So, congrats to the Patriots. And I guess now for the NFL season, since it's over, and it's time to look forward to the combine coming up in a couple of weeks. See where some of these high prospects goes from the Texas A&M defensive end, Myles Garrett, Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson, North Carolina quarterback Mitch Trubisky. See where these guys end up working themselves out at in the draft. A lot of people think Garrett will go to the Cleveland Browns at number 1. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see in the next couple of months until the draft happens in late April, early May. So let's move on to some of the things that is going on in the NBA. Of course, we just saw the All-Star game. And of course, the All-Star game, like it is in pretty much every other league, is a complete and utter joke. Nobody wants to play defense. It's just an offensive exhibition. It's probably no better than one of those YMCA pickup games where you're just going down, just shooting, free shooting, dunk contests during games. And that's basically what it was. Final score was 192-182. Ridiculous. And you only scored 200 points. So that was the joke. I, there's nothing else really to say about the All-Star game. And I think we all know what to expect from these All-Star games now. Everything's about offensive exhibition when it comes to these games. So that's not a story there. But the real story came after the game where we found out DeMarcus Cousins, the power forward slash center for the Sacramento Kings, got traded to the New Orleans Pelicans for basically a bunch of role players, or more or less. So bringing DeMarcus Cousins in with Anthony Davis makes them a playoff contender right off the bat without even having to say that, really. They're sitting about 2.5 games behind the Denver Nuggets for the eighth spot in the West. And bringing DeMarcus Cousins in there, you would think they would probably be able to get into that eighth spot. And if not seventh, depending on what happens with the Oklahoma City Thunder as we begin the second half of the season on Thursday evening. So with DeMarcus Cousins coming there, you pair him up with Anthony Davis. These are the top, these are two of the three players who are averaging 25 points and 10 rebounds per game. Russell Westbrook is the other guy. So you put these two in the middle, that makes a very formidable front court for anybody. Now the question is, who does New Orleans surround them with? You know, you still have Drew Holiday there, but they lost Buddy Hield, Tyreek Evans, Langston Galloway in that trade as well. So you got to see what other players are able to step up with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis being paired together. But it's a win for the Pelicans because they have to make this move. They have to try to do something to give Anthony Davis some help. So who better to do that than, or do that with, than the best, probably the best offensive big man we have in this league today. So a lot of people are surprised this trade happened at all. Maybe what's surprising is where he went, but DeMarcus Cousins has been the subject of trade speculation for about 2 or 3 years now, because we know what he can do on the court, but a lot of people just kind of had issues whether or not to trade for him because of his temperament on the court. He's kind of a hothead. He's leading the league in technical fouls this year, but it was just a question of whether or not that talent outweighed the doubts. For New Orleans, apparently that talent did outweigh the doubts, and we'll see what he can do with a team that actually has a legit chance of winning the playoffs, or being in the playoffs, excuse me. He didn't have no chance to go to the playoffs in Sacramento. Sacramento is a complete mess. The management is a complete mess. They don't know what they want to do. And they kept on saying the whole time, oh, no, DeMarcus isn't going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. But I mean, most people know he was trying. They were trying to trade him. They were just trying to see if they could get the best deal. And for what they got, it really wasn't that good of a deal for Sacramento, because now you just have a bunch of small players. You have Ty Lawson there, Darren Collison already there, Aaron Afalo already there, and Ben McLemore's already there. Now you add Tyreek Evans and Buddy Hield, and I guess they're going to cut Matt Barnes. It's crazy what they're trying to do there. And then they're trying to stock up for the draft class coming up this year, which is supposed to be one of the deeper ones we've seen in a while. But Sacramento is a mess. DeMarcus, don't get me wrong, probably has his issues. He's not perfect, but you can't possibly tell me he's not happy to get out of Sacramento. I know he had an interview last week talking about, I want to stay in Sacramento. I want to see my jersey hung up on the Raptors when I'm done playing there. But yeah, he's probably not too upset about leaving Sacramento. I wouldn't be. So I guess that just leads to maybe some other trades, because now that other teams have seen New Orleans is trying to do something, let's see what some of these other teams try to come up with. The trade deadline is Thursday, and a lot of teams, or excuse me, not a lot of teams, a lot of people are trying to see what's going to happen, particularly with the dumpster fire we know as the New York Knicks. A lot of people want to know where Carmelo Anthony is going to go. He has a no trade clause in his contract, and there has been no indication to tell me he wants to leave New York. Even through all of that mess he has been going through, you have Phil Jackson, the team president, needling him, trolling him on Twitter with his cryptic tweets, just saying whatever mess that comes to his mind. I mean, it's crazy. I wonder if Phil Jackson even comes to the games a lot of times. But Carmelo has handled this situation about as classy as you can. He stands in front, answers questions from the swarming New York media, because, of course, as we know, New York is the #1 market in America in terms of media. And he just stands there and answers every question to the best of his ability. He hasn't gone getting loose on Twitter. He hasn't bashed anybody. He has handled this as about as well as you can handle it. And honestly, I would like to see New York do something. It's been a while since the Knicks have been successful. I mean, to the point where they could contend for a title. With the mix of players they have right now, that's just not going to happen anytime soon unless they make some moves. And maybe Melo will have to leave at some point. He may have to waive that no trade clause. And personally, I know the Cleveland Cavaliers have been rumored about trading for him. If Cleveland does that, that's crazy. Don't go ahead and trade Kevin Love, especially. I know he's hurt right now, but don't trade Kevin Love for Carmelo Anthony. I don't think you're getting better there. If you're the Clippers, I mean, to me, they're not okay. The Clippers aren't trying to get rid of either Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, or DeAndre Jordan. Those people are apparently off limits. But honestly, Blake Griffin are slated to be free agents soon. I think maybe you might have to get rid of them before you lose them without getting anything in return. And it's time for the Clippers to probably break that core up anyway. See what they do this year. I thought they should have broken that core up a couple of years ago, but they've stayed together. They kept everybody together. They've had a little bit of bad luck with injuries. We'll see what happens with the Clippers, but I think it's time to break that team up, especially if they don't do anything this year. Break it up. It's time to move on, go another direction. And then one other team that's been looked at is the Chicago Bulls. Been some rumors about Jimmy Butler going to Boston. Boston's another interesting team because they have a lot of assets and a lot of draft picks that they can work with. So look for Boston to possibly make a move. Chicago is another team. They're on that wavelength with New York. They probably need to start over and blow some things up too. With New York, you have Derrick Rose there, Brandon Jennings there, Joakim Noah there. And all these guys are just underperforming. It's probably they probably overpaid for him anyway, especially Joakim Noah. So it's probably time to break that up, blow that up. And the Bulls, they're just not very good either. They came in getting Dwayne Wade. And I think by putting Dwayne Wade with Jimmy Butler and Rajon Rondo, they thought they had a core they could start to work some things around. But those other players really haven't stepped up, in particular, Doug McDermott and Nikolai Miricic. So it just depends on what they want to do, what direction they're trying to go in. But it's probably time to start over in Chicago as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few days before the trade deadline starts, or excuse me, until the trade deadline gets there. I can't talk right now. It's been a while. Sorry, y'all. But it will be interesting to see what happens as the trade deadline nears and to see if some of these teams decide to be buyers or sellers. Another thing before we move on to college basketball, Serge Ibaka going to the Toronto Raptors from the Orlando Magic. It's about time Toronto made a move to help Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan carry a little bit of the load. So this move right here for Toronto, I think this probably solidifies the number 2 spot, if not the number 1 spot. We'll see what happens with Cleveland. Now, Cleveland, we know they're getting ready. They're preparing to do things in May or June. That's just the way they've been built. But with Kevin Love out, J.R. Smith will be coming back soon. You wonder what Cleveland is going to do in terms of keeping that number 1 spot. Are they really worried about keeping that number 1 spot? It would be nice, I'm sure, to keep the home court advantage. But right now, I think they have a 2.5 game lead over Boston in the Eastern Conference standings. And I'll have to fact check that to make sure. But I think it's around that number. We'll see if they hang in there. You still have LeBron James. You still have Kyrie Irving there. And in the Eastern Conference, they could still probably keep that lead to where they can keep the number 1 spot. But getting to Toronto, getting Serge Ibaka is huge. Not only does he help Lowry and DeRozan, but he can also help Jonas Valanciunas in the middle. It's about time Toronto made a move. If you guys remember, I've been screaming for them to make some sort of a move to help the backcourt. This is pretty good. I like this move they made. And that was the first one that happened before All-Star break even started. So it will be fun to see how these teams start to materialize before the trade deadline and then moving on as they jockey for position for the playoffs, which start in mid-April. let's move on to college basketball. And as we can see, the Blue Bloods are starting to emerge as some teams to look at when it comes to who can cut the nets down in Phoenix or at the University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, come early April. You have Kansas. Kansas is looking really strong right now. I'm not a big fan of Kansas, but I do like the toughness they have shown throughout the year. And that backcourt with Frank Mason and you have Jackson and Graham back there playing with them. Those guys are as tough as they come. They had a ridiculous comeback on last Monday against West Virginia with about 2.5 minutes left. They were down by 14 points and they were able to come back and win that game in overtime. Then they went down to Waco and had an 8-0 run at the end to pull the win out against Baylor. These guys are peaking at the right time, and the way they are winning these close games down the stretch, that's the toughness you need coming into March Madness. Kansas is something to be looking out for. And North Carolina looks like they're starting to peak. And Duke looks like they're getting their stuff together as well. So it's those traditional powers starting to get their stuff together at the right time. Purdue is another team that is looking pretty good with Caleb Swanigan and Isaac Haas playing in the middle, Vince Edwards with the guard play. Purdue is looking strong. And then you go out west, you have UCLA with Lonzo Ball, Arizona with Alonzo Trier leading them, and then Oregon with Dylan Brooks. Those are three teams out there. And I can't forget Gonzaga. Gonzaga also looks like they can make a run for the Final Four and potentially a title. Now with Gonzaga, we have to see they haven't gotten past the Elite Eight ever. So if they can get past the Elite Eight, that would be breaking news there. But a lot of people wonder about them because of the strength of schedule. They are the only undefeated team right now in college basketball, or at least Division One or FBS, whatever it is, the Division One college basketball. So we'll see what happens with Gonzaga as they start to get into the tournament. I mean, I think they're pretty good, even though their schedule doesn't really say that much. I mean, they play in the weak conference, but I think they're pretty good, and they will be tough for anybody to beat if they're meeting Gonzaga up in tournament time. Also, I can't forget about Villanova. A lot of people forget about Villanova, but they are the defending champs. They did win the national championship last year, and they had a lot of those people returning. And right now, they're sitting at number 2 in the polls. So Villanova is still very dangerous. They won't. They're not just going to give the title away. You're going to have to take that title from them. They have tough play. Josh Hart, the guard, is a consensus pick for player of the year in college basketball. So Villanova is nobody to sleep on either. I personally think, just kind of looking at how things are starting to shape out, there could be a potential 15, 20 teams, I feel, that can make a run, get hot, and ride that all the way to the championship. Let's remember, this is a one and done scenario in March Madness. So you're pretty much done. So you have to make sure you are on point every single time you play. And if you're not, then you go home. It's just that simple. So it'll be fun. Right? It'll be fun to see how things break down, where the seedings are, who gets put where, uh, who's the number 1, who's the number 2, and of course matchups and styles. That's what's really fun about March Madness, because you get to see the different styles. You get to see the team that has the big dude in the middle so they can slow it down. You see a lot of zone defenses. You see a lot of man defenses. You see a lot of presses. Oh, that's another team, Louisville. Watch out for Louisville. With their offense starting to get together, it's always strong. Louisville's another team that could make a run. So I just keep on thinking of teams as I'm talking to y'all. So you just never know how things are gonna go when it comes to these one and done scenarios. But that's what makes March Madness March Madness. You can have a 15 seed defeated 2 seed. 14 seed defeat a 3 seed. We haven't seen a 16 seed defeat a 1 yet, but I think that will happen soon. It could happen this year. Who knows? But it will be fun to see which team gets hot and rides it on out to cutting the nets down in Phoenix. That is about it. I will be back, or I plan on being back for a few shows, or maybe a couple, at least one show later on, but I felt like it was good to get back on here to touch some bases and kind of catch everybody up and catch myself up on all the happenings of sports. So I'm glad to be able to get in here, and I will see you guys later on in the week. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Google Plus, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So I'll continue to post on there, and I'm still working on those new additions now that things are starting to kind of settle down for me. Shorts, and among other things, those shorts where you can get on there and just talk about a topic for like 2 or 3 minutes. So that should be fun. Patrick said he's good to help me out with those, and we'll continue to evolve this show as the year goes along. Until then, everybody take care. Have a good week. It's good to talk to you guys, and I will see y'all later on in the week. Take care.